Notre Dame football is making a push for the playoffs. In Marcus Freeman's third season under the Golden Dome, the Fighting Irish head coach looks to follow in the footsteps of legends and lead Notre Dame to its 12th national championship.
Our approach to the season hasn't changed. We prepare to win every game we play.
Tonight, WSBT-22 Sports takes you inside the Irish for the most in-depth look at the roster. We'll visit with new quarterback Riley Leonard, who has a stockpile of weapons in his arsenal. The Irish defense returns major depth and projects to be among the nation's best. And we'll sit down one-on-one with Marcus Freeman to get you ready for the 2024 season. This special presentation of WSBT-22 Sports starts now.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's special presentation of WSBT Sports. I'm Pete Byrne alongside Eric Hansen, co-publisher of Inside ND Sports. And over the next hour, we will get you ready for a new season of Notre Dame football, which kicks off a week from Saturday at Texas A&M. Eric, first, thanks for being here. Always enjoy your company.
Thanks for having me.
And we've had about a half dozen opportunities to watch this team in practice. Training camp officially over as they turn their preparation to Texas A&M. What are your overall impressions of how the Irish have looked and the opportunities we've had to see them?
Well, when I go into camp, I kind of have a checklist of how expectations are meeting to what I'm seeing reality on the field. And I was able to check a lot of boxes off. You know, there's one prominent box I know we're going to talk about that didn't get checked off, but I think the rest of it, you think about the defense, it looks like a playoff team. You look at special teams, it looks like a playoff team. Most of the offense, there was no quarterback drama.
Correct.
But then there's one piece where it has a lot of people scratching their heads.
That's called a tease. We bring him here for a reason. Excellent work, and we will get to that very soon. But first, as Marcus Freeman enters his third year as a head coach at Notre Dame, he now has his third offensive coordinator in as many years. And the voice of new offensive coordinator Mike Denbrock has been a noticeable addition to the soundtrack of practice. Certainly fun to have him back out there, isn't it? Denbrock now in his third stint in South Bend, and his presence around the offense at practice has been unmistakable. He brings a sense of urgency to every drill the Irish run, and he says his primary goals during this training camp have been to solidify a starting five on the offensive line, grow an overall understanding of the offense among his players, and then there's this.
Developing what our identity is going to be offensively. What is that? I'm not quite sure exactly what that is yet. I mean, I have an idea of where I think we're headed, but the guys and the way they execute and the way that they play will dictate ultimately what we look like when we line up and play. And just being here is, a blessing every day. I love Notre Dame, and I love an opportunity to be part of this program and a part of this university. And then, obviously, the student athletes themselves are kind of what gets me up in the morning and gets me rolling.
Coach Denbrock brings an intensity but leadership to our offensive side of the ball. And I think great leaders understand when things need to be said, right? It's not just yelling and screaming over and over and over makes you a great leader. It's understanding, okay, at this point, this needs to be a point of emphasis. I need to get these guys going, hold them accountable, and I think he has a great feel for that. And you can see it. You can see our offense respond to that.
We've heard him a lot early in training camp, but then he also told us recently that he's having to say less and less as they progress, which is probably a great sign.
It is a great sign, and I think Marcus made a good point about it's not just the volume and the loudness and intensity. There's gears to Mike Denbrock's personality, and I think he is really settled in to being one of the elite offensive coordinators. That's why you saw him lead LSU's offense to the #1 spot in scoring and yards per game last year. It's a real contrast, I think, from the last time he was here. I think he was a really brilliant offensive mind. You're really seeing him assert himself and assert his ideas. He's not deferring necessarily to the head coach, although he knows who's boss, but I think he's not afraid to say what a good idea is, what a bad idea is.
Which is probably a good thing given how young of a head coach Marcus Freeman still is and the fact that he comes from a defensive background. Now, on the topic of leadership, Notre Dame named its captains over this past weekend. Not necessarily a surprise, but it certainly shows where the strength of this team is and that we have 4 of the 5 captains on the defensive side of the ball, and also 3 of them are graduates.
Yeah, you know, I can never remember this kind of imbalance between offense and defense, and I think it was a gutsy move to kind of do that. And yet, when you looked at the offense, there weren't a lot of obvious captains now. Maybe guys down the road like Jeremiah Love would be a captain down the road. This is the first time since, I believe, 2011 you haven't had an offensive lineman.
Correct. It's been a long time.
Well, we don't necessarily know who all the offensive linemen are going to be yet. But there were a lot of great candidates on the defense, and I think Marcus Freeman said this the other day, you don't have to be a captain to be a leader, and I think there are a lot of other leaders.
Well, you have led us right into this. Obviously, the offensive line and the dilemma as to who plays has kind of been the underlying tone of training camp. The goal for Notre Dame was to solidify that top 5, and it feels like with the season opener basically a week away, we still don't know who those 5 are. When Charles Jagasa went down to a season-ending injury, that obviously opened some things up on the left side. The last time we saw the Irish play, what did that line look like to you? When I say play, practice. Yeah.
I would say a work in progress. I would say somebody that it was a good thing it wasn't a Texas A&M game, and yet I thought they were learning. I mean, I thought they were absorbing what Joe Rudolph had to say. I think the one thing that we need to kind of throw in there is, you know, they've been, the NFL opened its doors to underclassmen in 1989. Never has an offensive lineman left as a true junior until this last draft cycle. Then you lose 2 of them in one, Blake Fisher and Joe Alt.
Right.
Can you imagine how different this team would be and how different our special would be today if we were talking about Joe Alt and Blake Fisher being on this team?
Yeah, the depth chart would be totally different. I mean, right now, if you go to your website, you guys keep track of the depth chart, and you have the dreaded Orr at left tackle. You've got Tosh Baker or Anthony Knapp, who's a true freshman, by the way. I think it's probably been a long. Is Sam Young the last true freshman to start in the season at left tackle?
Well, there have been 3. There was Blake Fisher was one of them.
Okay.
And then I'm blanking on who the other one was, but there have only
Ronnie
been.
Stanley didn't start as a freshman.
No.
Yeah.
There have been 3. Oh, Sam Young was the other one. He started at right tackle, Blake Fisher at left tackle. There have been 10 true freshmen to start for Notre Dame at least one game. Only one of them started every game in a season, and that was Sam Young in 2006. So all of them have maybe come at the midseason, and we may yet see that. We may see Garby Lambert at some point starting a game. The big 6'7", 318-pound right tackle that looks much more like a guy that would start as a freshman than 6'4", 291-pound Anthony Knapp. And I give Anthony Knapp a ton of credit. A 3-star recruit, worked his butt off to put himself in this position, does a lot of things right. What he's lacking is that big imposing length and big imposing size that you got with the Joe Alt, and even to a certain extent with Tosh Baker, 6'8", 320.
And I think that it's probably safe to say that we're going to see a mix of 7, 8 guys on that line over the course of the season, provided there's no injuries, and then obviously if there are injuries, that obviously extrapolates. All right, we need to take a quick time out, but when we come back, Notre Dame has a new quarterback running the show this season. We're going to get to know Riley Leonard when our preseason look at the Fighting Irish continues. What does Riley Leonard bring to this team?
When he steps on that field, he is as competitive as anybody I've ever been around, but he's a great teammate. And any great quarterback, to me, has to be a great teammate first, and then you become a great leader.
Welcome back to WSBT's Notre Dame football preseason special. All eyes entering the season are on transfer quarterback Riley Leonard. The senior, who spent last year at Duke, is now a captain at Notre Dame and the presumptive starter for the Fighting Irish. Leonard does have 21 career starts under his belt, all of them coming at Duke. He's as dangerous with his legs as he is throwing the football. Over the past several weeks, his coaches and teammates have praised his play and his growth. As for Leonard himself, he's quickly developing a good rapport with his new offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock.
It's similar to what I've done in the past. The quarterback has a lot of control and is able to extend plays in so many different ways. I think we're able to spread the ball out. We got weapons now, like all over the place, even at running back, tight end, obviously receivers. I think being, adjusting it wasn't too hard for me. Being a fourth-year guy who's been in a similar system my whole career it's been good. It's been an easy adjustment.
I think the question that Irish fans are most curious about is, can you take a dynamic quarterback like Leonard, put him with Mike Denbrock, and get anything remotely like what we saw last year at LSU with Jaden Daniels and Denbrock?
Right. I actually asked that question on Saturday because I saw similarities, and I was happy that Mike Denbrock also saw them. You know, Jaden Daniels is last year at Arizona State, pretty average numbers. His pass efficiency is in the 130s, which is below average. Last year, he set an NCAA record for passing efficiency at 208. So what happened? And I think Mike Denbrock was able to coach to his potential and scheme to his potential. And I think that's what he's seeing in Riley Leonard. And one of the big things is being able to trust your teammates. You know, a lot of times when you have that dual threat skill set, you're like, nobody's hoping I'm taking off, instead of trusting that receiver to get open. And that's very lately what Mike Denbrock is seeing, a little bit of glimpses of Riley trusting his teammates.
Let's talk a little bit more about his teammates. Audric Estime left big shoes to fill at Notre Dame, and sophomore Jeremiah Love would love to be the guy who steps in and carries the load, but he's also got company in the race for the top spot in the Irish backfield. Love and Jadarian Price had been battling for the starting role throughout fall camp. Love showed flashes of greatness last year as a freshman, playing in all 13 games, averaging better than 5 yards per carry. But Price is older. He was second on the team in touchdowns a year ago. He really shined in the Sun Bowl, rushing for over 100 yards in the absence of Estime. And I think in all likelihood, both of these players are expected to get a healthy dose of opportunities early on here in 2024.
Shoot, it was really important to me, you know, coming out as a young guy and then playing against, people I used to watch them play. So coming out and just being able to perform and, you know, kind of take what I did in high school, you know, do it a little bit on the college level. It was really great.
Anchoring down, being more physical in the pass game, you know, breaking more tackles, being more physical in the running game. I feel like I've done a lot in the space last season, but I think I could do even more when it comes to short yardage game.
JD's changed the direction that's super special, but so is Jeremiah. So it's almost like you flip a coin on what you get. Jeremiah's probably a more dynamic guy if you say, look, I want to line you up as a receiver, as a true receiver, and he can do some things that the other guys can't do. But even JD is very special out of the backfield with the ball in his hand. So it's a great situation to be in as a coach because you got two guys who are super, super high level that you can intermix in there.
We'll see them both. Do you think Love has the higher ceiling? That's the sense I get early on.
I think he does, and I think he's put himself in a position to have the higher floor, too. When we saw the Sun Bowl, the one thing that Price had an edge was between the tackles and breaking tackles, and Jeremiah couldn't do it. You could see kind of that home run speed, and somebody would grab an ankle and he would go down, or he would just not be able to break a tackle. Well, he was a little under 190 pounds in the Sun Bowl. He's 210 now with the same speed. So I think he brings the best of what both those backs bring, plus the elite speed. So I think he has an edge there. Plus, in the spring, he was working at wide receiver. He widened his skill set. I think Jeremiah Love is going to be, you know, the star player on the offense outside of Riley Leonard. When you take any of the other 10, I think Jeremiah Love is going to be the guy we're talking about most during the season.
I think that's something that'll make Irish fans happy as well. Hey, it's time for us to take another break, but when we come back, Marcus Freeman is gearing up for his third season as the Fighting Irish head coach. So how has he grown? He talks about that during part one of our conversation, which is coming up next.
As a head coach, you have a plan, but there's also a feel that you have to have when you're going through a practice that, okay, hey, do we need to live this up? Do we need to be a little bit more physical? Do we need to pull back? And I think great leaders are able to have that feel for what the need is.
Welcome back to the WSBT Notre Dame football preseason special. Marcus Freeman is entering his third season as a college head coach, and he has the number 7 ranked team in the nation. I recently sat down one-on-one with the Irish head coach to get his thoughts on his team as he heads into the season opener. So you're 38 years old, which makes you one of the younger D1 coaches, but you're not a rookie anymore, right? You've gone through this a few times. So I'm curious, as you enter this year, how do you feel more comfortable and more prepared than you did in the first couple of years?
Yeah, Pete, there's no substitution for experience. And I think, you know, when I look back to year one and the things you probably didn't know, that you know now going into year 3, and you know, every year you're going to get better. You're going to learn different things. And so I think the focal point this year, and for me, it might be, I know it's different than certain year 1. And so the ability to just understand, hey, here's our process and our plan and what terms we believe will produce the outcomes that we want. How do I look for different things to enhance what we're doing? But it's not like year 1 where you're trying to say, what is our process? What exactly are we going to do to try to achieve these desired results? You have a great idea for what it is. Now the opportunity is to enhance it.
And you feel pretty comfortable in that process, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple years now that you know, I feel like I have obviously a great feel for what we need to do to prepare for this upcoming season, and yeah, I definitely feel more comfortable.
On the flip side, what if anything concerns you at this point?
Well, you know, for me as a head coach, injuries always concern you, right? Is that you have to physically prepare to play a 12-game season. You have to make sure you're physically ready to go. Well, part of that is going to entail some injuries, as we've seen happen here over, you know, 1 or 2 guys gone down, that it happens. And so that to me is always something that I'm concerned about. But I'm really pleased with overall the health of this team.
Since you brought that up, where do you draw the line between the need to prepare the guys for a physical sport but not wanting to get someone hurt? I mean, where's the sweet spot? And it might be different for each coach.
Yeah, I think there's never just, it's not black and white, right? There's always a little bit of gray, but you have to tackle, you have to go live some, but you also got to be smart. You can't just, to me, be overboard. And maybe that's one of those things we talk about, we've learned maybe from year 1 to year 3 is, okay, where do I need to be intentional about the physicality of practice, and where can we be probably more intelligent about how we utilize this time we have to prepare. And so there is no just fine line. And it's almost a feel thing, I think, as a head coach. You have a plan, but there's also a feel that you have to have when you're going through a practice that, okay, hey, do we need to live this up? Do we need to be a little bit more physical? Do we need to pull back? And I think great leaders are able to have that feel for what the need is.
This year in the portal, you got a quarterback and a bunch of veteran wide receivers. How much more explosive through the air do you expect you guys will be this year?
Well, I think we're going to be explosive. We have to be explosive. We have to throw the ball over the top of a defense, and we have the playmakers to do, and we have the quarterback to can be able to do that. And so, Coach Denbrock's an aggressive person, and he doesn't shy away from trying to create big plays. And so that's something that we definitely will be intentional about trying to do.
It's pretty clear watching practice that Coach Denbrock is in charge on the offensive side, and he's got a handle on that. What does Coach Denbrock bring to your offense, and what do you think the identity of that will be?
I think there's an edge, there's a grittiness to it, there's a confidence, but they're also grateful for this opportunity that they have, and there's an intensity to what they bring, what he brings to our offense, and so it's going to be successful. And that's what I know about Mike Denbrock and our times at Cincinnati together, and then seeing what he did at LSU. Like, Mike Denbrock's going to make sure that offense is successful and put his playmakers in position to make plays.
In this portal age, where you have to bring in guys, sometimes several guys, is your role as much like a GM as it is a coach? Is that fair?
I mean, there's so many different things that entail being a head coach, and part of that is the transfer portal, part of that is recruiting, part of that is managing adults, part of that is managing players. Like, there's so many hats you have to wear, but I think the most important part of being a head coach is making sure you're where you need to be, right? What place needs your attention? And that, to me, what I've learned in these 3 years is that you have to be able to observe that certain areas need your attention at certain times, so you have to be there.
This time of the year, do you feel like you can't wait for games to start, or do you feel like there's not enough time to get everything done between now and day one?
It depends what time of the day you ask me that question. Right now, it's just staying in the moment, and I feel like we have enough time. We'll be ready to go. You know, but I don't want to continue to just think about game 1, because then you're wasting this moment that you have now. And that is what we got to focus on, because if us thinking about game 1 doesn't help us prepare for right now. We got to think about what opportunity we have right now in front of us, and how do we make sure that we're putting ourselves in a position to have success and to win that moment that we have, and that's what we're going to do.
Marcus Freeman feels like he's certainly grown in his 2+ years as a head coach. I'm curious where you've seen it the most.
Yeah, and we all know year 3 is historically the defining year for Notre Dame head coaches. I think where I've seen in a couple places, one is his understanding of the offense. It felt like when he was first a head coach, he was more kind of a bystander or a passenger, and now he's a lot more involved. He's got a lot more ideas and vision for what he wants the offense to look like. He still listens to the voices that are important, but his voice is important now too. I think the other thing is building the infrastructure for this program. And some of these are hires that go under the radar. The director of analytics that he just hired, Anthony Tresh, Matt Jansen last summer, director of scouting. They're already building a database for the portal for this December. Chad Bowden elevated to general manager. All those things help you be better on Saturdays. I think where he still has a ways to go, though, is game day management. That's where we need to see the jump in Marcus's performance this year.
Interesting thoughts. We need to take another break, but when we come back tonight, Notre Dame's defense is loaded with playmakers and preseason All-Americans. Eric and I will take a closer look at the Irish on that side of the ball right after this.
Every year we just get better with the same stuff. If you just do the 3 or 4 basic things right, near perfectly, like nobody can beat you.
Welcome back. We just heard from Howard Cross there. Notre Dame's defense, Eric, is expected to be the strength of this team. That's no secret. I think the fact that 4 of the 5 captains are defensive players probably tells us an awful lot.
It does, and I think that the fact that the offense won the Jersey scrimmage the other day, I think is a fluke. I think the defense, if they're doing everything that they're capable of doing, they're going to beat everybody in a scrimmage and be able to carry Notre Dame in most of these games.
We all know that having an elite defense is one of the ways that you put your team into the playoff conversation, which we'll get to in a little bit. Benjamin Morrison, one of those players, burst onto the college football scene as a freshman, pulling down more interceptions than any other freshman in the country and earning All-American status. Now, his sophomore year, perhaps less spectacular statistically, but still very impressive. And now as Morrison prepares for what could be his final season at Notre Dame, he's healthy, and he is once again on everyone's radar. Benjamin Morrison is racking up the accolades as opening kickoff to the 2024 season nears. The junior has been named a first-team preseason All-American by the Sporting News, ESPN, and The Athletic. But despite all the attention, Morrison is keeping things in perspective.
Last year I was named on some of that stuff, and postseason I wasn't on any. So I mean, that just shows that like that stuff doesn't really matter. Just put your head down and work, and just understand that stuff comes. And honestly, I'm happy the growth I've made from my sophomore and junior year. Growth in his game and also his health. Morrison had surgery on his right shoulder in March, forcing him to miss most of spring practice. However, as you can see, he's been on the field in training camp and looking more and more like the shutdown corner the Irish need him to be. Having that injury was a little setback for me, but understanding that I can get back to full go before game 1 was big for me. And once I learned that information, I just attacked every single day and just putting my head down and working.
He approached the game as a pro, so it was good for him to get the mental side this spring. He worked hard in his rehab, and he hasn't missed a beat since he got out. Part of Morrison's preparation this training camp has been lining up across from Jaden Thomas and the new stable of veterans in the Irish receiving corps. But his game allows mine to kind of grow. His strengths kind of can expose my weaknesses. I mean, but that's what practice is for. I mean, at his top of the route has been really beneficial for my development as a DB, and beneficial to the growth of the Irish secondary as a whole. In Morrison's absence, Jaden Mickey and Christian Gray both got starters reps during spring ball. Now the two are fighting for one job, and Morrison believes it's elevating the entire group in the process. The common mentality is that we all want to get better. That's all you can ask for as a upperclassman now, and it's a competitive group. So everyone wants to come out on top. So I mean, that's the biggest thing, is them competing over there is allowing me to compete. Them competing is allowing our whole defense just to elevate a little bit, I would say. Coming up next, Notre Dame added 3 veteran wide receivers from the transfer portal. We will take a closer look at how that trio has transformed the position for Notre Dame when our preseason look at the Fighting Irish continues.
Coach Denbrock's an aggressive person, and he doesn't shy away from trying to create big plays, and so that's something that we definitely will be intentional about trying to do.
Welcome back to the program. Arguably no position on Notre Dame's roster has been made over more thoroughly than wide receiver. WSBT's Bennett Wise joins us now in studio with a look at those changes. Bennett?
Well, Pete, last year, no Irish wideout or tight end eclipsed the 500-yard receiving mark. Then Chris Tyree transferred, so did Rico Flores Jr. and Tobias Merriweather. But Marcus Freeman and wide receiver coach Mike Brown handled the departures by bringing in transfers known for producing and hold just about every trait you would want in that room.
Finish it. There's 8 or 9 guys that I would feel comfortable with, like, being in the game. So just trying to find the right combinations and, you know, who the kind of top 6 guys are that are going to be the main guys in the rotation.
Half of Notre Dame's top 6 receivers last year are gone. So Marcus Freeman and wide receivers coach Mike Brown elevated the room with speed, size, and better production than the guys they're replacing. Transfers Chris Mitchell, Bo Collins, and Jaden Harrison.
Being with them is, I learn something from them every day. You know, they're bigger guys, more physical guys. It challenges me to be more physical, you know, going against guys that are just as much as me.
A combined 121 college games played between the 3 transfers, mixed in with the experience from Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey, plus the promising young stars like Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse. Coordinator Mike Denbrock's quick motion and deep threat offense has all the pieces.
His offense has everything. Explosiveness, creativity. I mean, it's been fun being a part of it. You know, you're motioning all over the field. You're running routes from different spots. I mean, you know, it has you confused sometimes, and if you're confused, the defense is going to be confused, you know what I'm saying? So it's been really fun.
The offense definitely has some capabilities to be explosive, you know, but ultimately it's up to the players, right? And making plays, and you know, we're going to do our best to put them in position to do so, and then we'll let it play out as the year goes along.
Now, a couple other wideout names to watch for. Freshman Micah Gilbert, who hauled in 5 catches for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Blue Gold game. And Cam Williams, 4-star wideout with size and upside. So Pete and Eric, overall, a lot more depth and versatility in that room compared to last year.
Bennett, thanks. That's certainly refreshing for a Notre Dame fan, because that's a position that's really, it felt like a position of need for years, I feel like, at Notre Dame. And then in addition to the guys that we just heard about, of course, Notre Dame's still very deep at tight end as well entering the year.
They have 6 healthy ones now, which is the healthy part is the big part. Yeah. And Mitchell Evans at the top of that rotation. I think Eli Reardon is in the line for a big year. And I look out for Cooper Flanagan. But the feel-good story is Kevin Bauman coming back from 3 season-ending or almost season-devouring injuries the last 3 years.
All right, we're going to take one more break. But when we come back, Notre Dame added a punter unlike any we've seen before at the position. I'll explain what I mean when the WSBT Notre Dame football preseason special continues.
Oh, James, he's awesome, man. Glad to have him. He's going to be a weapon for us.
Welcome back. Pete Byrne alongside Eric Hansen of Inside Indy Sports. Eric, Notre Dame got some unexpected news in April when veteran punter Bryce McPherson announced he was transferring with about a week to go in spring practice. McPherson leaves for Maryland, and he left the Irish without a punter, so they went out and found one in a rather unlikely spot.
I've always sort of had that natural skill. Growing up, we kicked the ball in the backyard.
If at first glance James Rendell doesn't look like your typical punter, it's because he's not. At 6'6", 220 pounds, Rendell is built more like a defensive end. And despite being 24 years old, he's never played a game of football in his life. American football, that is.
I grew up playing Australian rules football, which entails a lot of kicking the ball or punting, as Americans would say.
Rendell spent several years playing Australian rules football professionally in his native of Melbourne. In recent years, he decided to enhance his skills in the hopes of landing an opportunity in the U.S.
I always thought I had a big kick and it would be something worth trying. So, I joined up with Pro Kick Australia, and fortunately they recognised some potential in me. And when Notre Dame's punter hit the portal, there was a spot opened up, and they reached out to the Pro Kick guys.
A few weeks later, Rendell was in South Bend. And the 24-year-old graduate freshman, as he refers to himself, is preparing to play for the Irish this fall.
You know, being out here on the gridiron with my teammates over the past few weeks, it's been awesome. Obviously the skills are quite transferable, but at the same time, pro kick, you know, the coaches really do a good job of breaking down your old habits. The aim with punting an American ball is to try and kick up for hang time.
A quick glance at Rendell's highlights are enough to see he's got a strong leg, although he declined to share how far he can actually kick a football.
As long as I put the ball as far and as high as the team needs me to put it, then I'm happy and everyone's happy.
And unlike most of his punting peers across the country, Rendell won't be shy about delivering a big hit in coverage should the situation ever arise.
I hope I don't ever have to make a tackle, because that means that the punt hasn't gone to plan, but if I ever have to, I'll be ready, and my eyes will light up.
I want to see what Notre Dame Stadium sounds like when he knocks a guy through the sideline that one time they get around the end.
I want to get him to say shrimp on the bobby.
I'm sure he can say that. He's going to be a cult hero for this team this year, right?
He is, and his teammates have kind of given away his distance. We were talking to Jordan Faison, who will probably be the punt returner, and he said, I need to back up, I need to back up, I need to back up. And he's got different ways to kick, too. He can do the rolling rugby kick. He can do really good directional kicks with the traditional spiral. His location is really good. And I think the big difference between Bryce McPherson and James is you're going to get better net punting. Notre Dame was 83rd in the country. I think you'll see them in the top 10.
That'll be exciting. And again, it's not often you hear a coach refer to a punter as a weapon, but that's what Marcus Freeman said. You can see why. All right, we're going to take another timeout, but when we come back, how good are Notre Dame's chances to make the playoffs? We discuss that in part 2 of my conversation with Marcus Freeman right after this.
The more opportunities you have to make the playoffs, the better. And that's something we're definitely excited about.
There is a new playoff structure this season in college football. 12 teams will now make the postseason, a huge jump up from the 4 we've been used to. So how does that shape how the Irish approach this year? That's the topic of conversation in part 2 of my conversation with Marcus Freeman. 12 teams make the playoffs now. It's probably the biggest change in college football. It's going to create a lot more inclusion for teams as it comes to a national championship chase. Is that exciting for you and for your team?
Yeah, the more opportunities you have to make the playoffs, the better. And that's something we're definitely excited about. Our approach to the season hasn't changed. We prepare to win every game we play, and that's the ultimate approach of any college football team. But you understand the depth of your team has to make sure it's ready to go because of the extended season that could entail 4 extra games, and in that time period between game 12 and the first round of playoffs, you got to have a great plan for that. But it's exciting for us to know that there's 12 opportunities to make the playoffs instead of 4. But then we got to refocus on the things that it takes to get that opportunity, and that's taking care of the preparation and what we have in front of us.
It seems like an 11-1 record would be a playoff team, and possibly 10-2. Does that seem fair?
I mean, I think if you look at the history, if you're an 11-1 team, and you're probably going to be ranked in the top 12. If you're 10-2, you're really close to being ranked in the top 12. So I think if you look at history, yeah, that's the case. But who knows what's going to happen this year? And we just got to focus on doing what it takes to win every opportunity we have, and that's it. No matter what happened last week, no matter what team's up next, like focus on the moment, stay in the moment, win the moment, and let the rest of the stuff take care of itself.
At a school like Notre Dame, where you can't throw a conference championship out in front of the guys as a carrot, does having that buffer help, do you think, over the course of a season? Having a buffer that if you were to lose once, it's not all gone.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was all gone in previous years.
True.
One loss doesn't mean you're out of playoffs in previous years. So again, it's you let college football playoff committee figure that stuff out. Right? Let those that are going to tell you who the top 12 teams are figure it out. Let's just focus on preparing to win. And at the end of the season, we'll look back and say, hey, are we a playoff team or not? But we got to make sure we just focus on preparing to win every game we play. And I hope we did that last year, even if when we knew we weren't going to make the playoffs. Well, guess what? We're going to prepare to win because you work 300 days a year and you get 12 guaranteed opportunities. These guys love to compete. They work too hard not to. And so we can't worry about the past. Are we in the playoffs? Focus on this opportunity we have in front of us.
This time of year, what excites you most?
Today, this group, trying to be present with them, getting ready for practice tonight, that's what excites me, and that's what our players have to do. We can't look. I have to answer questions about the future, but that's not my concern. My concern is right now, and we have a plan for what's going to help us get these desired results, but in order to get those, we have to focus on now. We have to execute right now, and that result will be determined based off what we do today. And so that's what excites me, man. I get excited to be around these guys, to practice, to challenge them, challenge myself, watch us overcome challenges daily, and I do it with great men, great coaches, great young men, and great people.
Another guy you're working with now is Pete Bavacqua, your new boss. What have your conversations with him been like so far?
I've been great. You know, it's been cool for a whole year. This whole transition has been going on, and you know, it's been such a smooth transition as Jack, who's done a wonderful job for Notre Dame athletics, has phased out, and Pete has really taken over. And again, we've had great communication. We have a great relationship. To me, any great partnership is built on trust in a relationship, and me and Pete have a great relationship, and I know he's positioning us to be successful in the college football landscape, and that's all I can ask him to do, and just continue to just grow together. We're going to do this thing together, and it's exciting.
You guys have an easy attention grabber on week one, right? College game day, huge stadium. I mean, you're probably the game that week. Is that something you like right out of the chute?
What else would you want, all right? What else would you want? The ability to have all eyes on you, college game day, huge matchup, that's exciting. That's exciting. Any great competitor, if we can have that every weekend, I would love it. I would love that, you know, and because you want that. That's why you come to Notre Dame. That's why you're a part of this place. Now, that being said, we know that's coming. How do we make sure we're ready for that opportunity? And that's taken care of right now, right? Taken care of right now, but that's exciting to know that's in the future.
It's the ultimate coach speak to try and keep the players' attention on the here and now. But as the season progresses, if Notre Dame is winning, how powerful do you think it is to lean into the playoff potential that this team has, provided that it's real come, say, mid-October?
Yeah, I think you just turn on the television on a Tuesday night to ESPN and let them look at the rankings and see what they have to do to make that 12-team playoff, and preferably host a game in December right before Christmas. If Notre Dame plays up to its preseason number 7 ranking, they would play the 10 seed, which would be probably a really good SEC or Big Ten team in Notre Dame Stadium just before Christmas.
Which would be a wild atmosphere. So how does Notre Dame get to the magic number of 10 or 11 wins to make the college football playoffs? Well, we're going to take a look at the schedule and discuss that when our special presentation continues. Notre Dame opens up the season on August 31st under the lights at Texas A&M. Eric, how big of a tone setter is that opener, given the fact that it's a ranked opponent, it's national TV, and there's not a ton of meat on the schedule this year?
There's not, and there's not a quick redemption if you lose that game. I think practically Notre Dame is going to be at its best in November, so if it loses that game, it could run the table. It's just you kind of have this dark cloud hanging over you with really no margin for error until you get to November. But it will set the tone. But if they lose that, if they win it, they still have work to do.
Sure, and there is meat on the schedule in November. I don't think there's a chance that 11-1 they wouldn't be in the top 12. Do you think that schedule, a 10-2 team, can make the playoffs?
It depends which 2 losses. I don't think you can lose the 2 November games. You can't lose Florida State, can't lose USC, because they're looking for teams that are improving, not teams that are declining in November. I think in most years 10-2 gets them in, not this year.
Gotcha. We've talked a lot about the depth of this team and the experience of this team. There's also a few impact freshmen that we're keeping our eye on as we head into the season. I don't know if any of them will start, but if there is one, it's probably the linebacker Kingston Viliamu-Asa.
Right, on defense, and he's going to play a lot. They're playing a 5-man rotation at linebacker. Max Bowl, the linebackers coach, says we don't have starters. He's one of the 5 that'll play. I think the other guy that has a chance to start is on offense. It's Anthony Knapp at left tackle.
Sure.
But there's a lot of them on defense. Leonard Moore. You have Bryce Young at defensive end, the 2 freshman running backs. Bennett brought up some of the wide receivers that could get into action. So there's some really talented freshmen.
And how important do you think these guys will be for the team by the end of the year? You can't predict where injuries will be, but at some point, is there a spot where they need one of these guys to step up and kind of flash?
Well, they need Anthony Knapp to flash if he's going to be the starter. I think over the course of the season, you're going to need Leonard more to play well. Of the guys that we didn't mention, I think Gierby Lambert could end up being a guy that helps you down the stretch at tackle, and Tay Johnson at safety. Again, if there's some injuries and so forth, I would say those would be the two guys to watch. All
right, we'll keep an eye on that. In the meantime, we're going to call our final time up, but we'll be back to wrap up the program right after this. Football is 1 week away. Eric, thank you for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure working with you, and our viewers can see more of you throughout the year on your website.
Yes, and we're going to have a live show after road games with former Notre Dame offensive lineman Bob Morton. If you want the insight on what's going on with the offensive line, you want to tune into that.
That's right. All right, tune in InsideNDSports.com for that, and at WSBT all season long. That's our show for this evening. Notre Dame will kick off the season at Texas A&M next week. Until then, thanks for watching and enjoy the season. I'm Pete Byrne from WSBT-22 News. For more Notre Dame stories, like and subscribe to the WSBT-22 YouTube page. Thanks for watching.